What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Big Ten Football Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Guggenheim. Excited to bring on Curt from SkiUPod. Curt, thanks for coming and repping the Golden Gophers. How you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. Always looking forward to talk Gopher football, so appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, and you are very committed because as we are recording, you're in the middle of maybe the craziest storm. Well, it's not that bad, but there is some thunder and lightning. So you're sticking it out like a trooper. We appreciate it.
I am. You'll hear my dog barking throughout the show. I apologize to the listeners, but thanks for having me still.
For sure. Before we kind of get too far into this, where can we find you guys and when do you drop episodes?
Yeah, so our YouTube is at SkiUPod, and actually any podcast platform you listen to your pods on, we're at SkiUPod. On X, we're at SkiUPod1, and that's primarily where we're posting right now. The schedule's not super consistent. We're at like an every other week right now, just with the kind of slower off season with how tight PJ Fleck likes to keep the news on his football team. But we are going to be live this Thursday. So we're usually going live now at around 7:30. So this Thursday we'll be live, which is, what is the date? What's today's date?
Today is the 21st.
So that'll be the 23rd. We'll be live at 7:30 p.m. Central on X and YouTube. So
that's a very important distinction I have learned very quickly being on the East Coast, because I was talking with Joel over at Iowa and TJ in Nebraska, although he lives in Oregon. But I was like, okay, let's do this time. They're like Eastern or Pacific or Central, and I'm like, whoa. This is a different world for me. So good. So 7:30 Central, that's 8:30 Eastern.
Correct.
Very good. This is, I think, the third time that we've gotten to talk, because we've talked a couple times over at the Big Ten Huddle, but I'm excited to get more of maybe a personal interview just about the program, the state of the program. My first question, where does SkiUMA come from? Because I hear PJ Fleck say it after every post game. Obviously, you guys are SkiUPod. Tell the Big Ten listeners, what is SkiUMA and how did that become a thing for Minnesota?
Yeah. So it's funny that at one point, gosh, I don't remember the pod we were on, but they thought PJ invented that saying as well. SkiUMA has actually been with the university since like the late 1800s.
No kidding.
I believe it came from like either a rowing or like a canoe type race. And we heard the university students that were on the rowing team heard like it was a Native American chant. It didn't sound exactly like SkiUMA, but they heard the Sky U. I don't remember what the last syllable was, but basically our team took that and changed it to SkiUMA to fight like the rah-rah fight song of the U of M. And so that's been a part of the university for, since early 1900s, late 1800s. And so SkiUPod, we just took the SkiUMA and little play on words. Got to give credit to my buddy Max, who's always on the show with us. He actually thought of that one when we were trying to think of a name. So can't take credit, but we like it. So
very good. And I particularly appreciate that is in response to that team up north. And so I love it even more now as an avid Buckeye fan. So well done to go against the Wolverines. You guys, I remember starting really watching. I really got into college football around 2000, 2001. So I remember Glenn Mason being at with the Gophers, and then Tim Brewster, which I'm sure most of you guys want to forget that
I think era. He does too. He blocks every Gopher fan on Twitter, if you're not aware.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I looked it up because I heard that this is what he's doing. I looked him up. I've never tweeted about him, nothing. I looked and I was blocked. So it's like a initiation to be a Gopher fan on the old Twitters if you're blocked by
so that's how well that tenure went for Minnesota.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Jerry Kill, Tracy Claeys, who I loved Jerry Kill. I thought he was a great coach for Minnesota. And now PJ Fleck, this is year 8 for him, which I didn't realize it had been that long. And he's had some real high highs, 2019, went 11-2, had the big upset against Penn State. And then, 2021, 2022 were good, 9-4 both years. But then this past year, was 5-7, did go to a bowl game. But a little up and down. I would love to hear, Curt, from your perspective, being a lifelong fan and being close to that fan base, that program. How do you evaluate PJ Fleck's tenure so far?
Yeah. Overall, I just want to say before it sounds like I get too harsh, I am happy with him. I want him to be the coach here. I think he's done a good job. His recruiting has been the best that we've seen here. I think when you got to go back a little bit to that Fleck, Tracy Claeys era, because Brewster left the program in total shambles. It was terrible by the time he was done here. And Kill and Claeys put in a lot of work to build that up to like a 6-6 to 8 win team consistency. And essentially Fleck was brought in to be that guy to elevate the offensive side of the ball, bring in that, really special talent and take the next step. And that 2019 season hit and it looked like, yep, this is exactly what we were all waiting for. This is what we can do. We can get this passing offense going, kind of separate ourselves a little bit from the Iowa and Wisconsin, who are terrific programs and have had great success. But having that, exciting passing offense that not a lot of Big Ten West teams had, we thought would be a separating factor for us. Well, since that special season, it's kind of fallen off and we've kind of come back down to earth as far as, we were like 10th from the bottom in the nation in passing last year. So I think that's where all of the frustrations come from for the most part with PJ is his conservative play calling nature and not getting back to being able to make throws and, have a successful passing offense that can push the ball down the field. Whether that's a lack of having the talent at receiver that we did that year, Rashad Bateman, Tyler Johnson. But, again, it's been 5 years now almost. So it's kind of on PJ to get that back up and going. So I think this season's going to be really interesting to see if he finally learns to kind of put his foot on the pedal as far as moving the ball offensively. But he has brought a lot of consistency as far as running the football, something that Minnesota's been pretty good at. But I do think he's elevated the offensive line talent that's been here, as well as putting guys in the NFL pretty consistently more than what was happening before him. So having at least a guy drafted in the last, I think it's 5 drafts now. So that's not something that's typical for Minnesota. So overall, I like him. It's just, okay, now we got to keep getting back to taking that next step forward. We understand that not every season is going to be that double-digit win season, but it's time to get back closer to those types of seasons.
Yeah. I'm just curious, what do you attribute maybe the offensive lull to? Like, is there one thing or multiple things?
Yeah, I think it's 2 things. And I think PJ, with how you've seen him go to the portal, I think it's a talent issue in some regards. He's gone out and reloaded the receiver room again through the portal with guys he's brought in. Reloaded the quarterback room. Basically, it is a brand new quarterback room. None of these guys, except for the walk-on, was on the roster last year. And then I think it's PJ's conservative nature. Listen, Kirk Soraka has had 2 stints with had 2 stints, I should say, as Minnesota's offensive coordinator. 2019, it worked great. And before that, it was working pretty well. He came back. Bateman and Johnson were gone. It wasn't as good, but we saw improvements from the year when he wasn't here. So I think PJ just has to let his offensive coordinators cook. There's a story in Soraka's last year here in 2022, I think that would put it at now. We're on the road at Nebraska. We have a 4th and 1. Half of the offensive staff wanted to go for it and half of them didn't. There's a quote from Fleck after that game about, well, one offensive coach was telling me one play, one coach was telling me the other, so I decided to just punt the ball. And we ended up winning, so it turned out fine. But I thought that conversation was revealing just of how, we were paying Kirk Soraka about $1 million a year, which is well above anyone else on the offensive coordinator staff. If PJ isn't going to just defer and listen to him in that situation, I don't know who he's going to listen to as far as seniority goes of play calling. So he just is a very conservative. Jim Tressel brought him up. He comes from that same mindset. He wants to play really good defense and run the ball and just not make any mistakes. And I think that's a great mindset to have. Look at what I mean, Iowa's basically done that and had great success. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, if you keep the offense so bland, eventually it's going to be hard to get recruits in and hard to get those special playmakers to want to come play for you and to keep that success going of being able to air out the football like you saw in 2019. So I think PJ just has to be able to mix it up and throw the ball more often. I really do. I think he's got some talent there this year. So I think he's just got to trust it and not get in his own way.
Yeah. Well, and you're leading me right to where I want to what I want to ask you, which is Max Brosmer, key transfer from the D2 level. Like, how big was that for this program?
Well, it's huge in the obvious way it's huge is that we basically cleared out the quarterback room. So we had nobody to fill in. And
That's fair.
they singled him out early and often, like, hey, you're going to be the guy. We want you. In the portal, according to 247, they had him as a 4-star recruit in the portal. So they were high on him. He had a lot of experience throwing the ball as well. If you look at the past 2 years, he had over 400 passing attempts in each of the last 2 years. I mean, compare that to Ethan threw it 294 times last year. So we got a quarterback that just used to throwing the ball and had success, over 300 or over 3,000 passing yards in each of the last 2 seasons as well. So to go out and get him and just a guy, what PJ did was basically doubled down on his offensive staff. He didn't change anyone on the offensive staff. He said, I think our quarterbacks did not get the job done last year. So he revamped that whole room, brought in some more receivers, and he wants to just have his quarterback be able to make the plays that are there. Because there were guys open in critical times last year where our quarterback just unfortunately missed the throws that were there. So I think PJ thinks he's got the right guys in place to have a successful team. He just needed the leader and signal caller to be more consistent throwing the ball. And they zeroed in on Brosmer. And I'm going to get yelled at if I call him Brosmer. I accidentally called him that on JR show the other week. And it's Brosmer.
It's Brosmer.
So, yeah.
Well, now people can yell at me. So, because I got it wrong.
I do it out of habit. I just, but anyway. So we're excited for him. We didn't get to see him much because there wasn't a lot of spring access to the fans. But from all reports, he's looking good. So
I know from talking to you and I think listening to other Minnesota folks, a lot of people see Brosmer as a clear upgrade to Ethan Kaliak-Manis, who I'd love to ask you about eventually, but I do want to ask you more that, there were other transfers that they got and they're very senior laden across the board. I've been a big Daniel Jackson fan. I think he's a very underrated receiver who hasn't really been able to shine in this offense. But I think he is a really good receiver. Who else should we be looking out for? You were talking about playmakers that they're looking to bring in and that they brought in. Who should we be looking for?
Well, in a way, these guys are newer this year just because Lemeke Brockington missed basically all of last year. He got hurt the second game of the year. He didn't have a lot of catches, but he was averaging roughly 20 yards a catch for his receptions that he did get in last year.
That's explosive.
And 2 years ago against Wisconsin on the road, he caught the slant and took it 45 yards to the house to basically win the game with like 3 minutes left. That was the game-winning play. So getting him back and healthy is big. But then we also brought in transfers like Tyler Williams, former 5-star recruit from Georgia, didn't play at all really at Georgia, jumped in the portal, came here, I'm assuming for an opportunity to get on the field sooner because Georgia's got it rolling down there right now. And we also have Elijah Spencer, who got some playing time last year. He was a transfer out of Charlotte. So this is his second full year here, and we're hearing good things about him. So I think there's a lot of guys that we have, there as options to throw the ball to. And we also brought in Donald Driver's son. I think his name's Christian Driver. I don't have that in front of me, but
Christian Driver.
Yep, out of Penn State. So they reloaded the receiver room, added depth, maybe you could even say, just because you return Daniel Jackson and Lemeke. So those will probably be your top two, along with Elijah Spencer. But then you got these portal guys that have a lot of upside that maybe wasn't there before, at least not with the accolades that these guys seem to have, at least out of high school. So those guys for the receiver room. And then, as far as just transfers in general, Ethan Robinson's a corner out of Bucknell who you're probably is going to just plug in right away on the outside, opposite of Justin Wally.
That's fun. As an FYI, I actually live about a mile from Bucknell.
Oh, do you?
So I didn't realize that you guys got a transfer from Bucknell. That's exciting.
Yeah, he has, he started at least his last 2 years there. He had 25 pass breakups those last 2 years. He was another guy that had a lot of offers. I believe the Virginia schools, Tech and Virginia, both wanted him. So that he had Power 5 offers out there in the portal. Convinced him to come to Minnesota, and that was considered a big win. So he'll probably start right away outside. I think that's the expectation alongside Justin Wally. So 2 senior cornerbacks on the outside. It's always nice to have a lot of experience.
Very cool. That's exciting. I had no idea. You said that's Ethan Robinson. That was the small world.
I also got to bring up one more because he's from Minnesota. Jackson Howard's another kid they got out of the portal. Not sure how much he'll play. He'll probably get rotated in at the DN spot this year. Former number 1 recruit in Minnesota, spent last year at LSU before. I think he played in like 2 or 3 games. He's got all 4 years of eligibility, but got him to commit back home now. And, Minnesota just doesn't have a lot of 4-star kids like that at the defensive end. So he looks different compared to, the other young guys on the team at that position. So he's a kid that could get some early playing time as well.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's a few things that you're talking about, Curt, that I think make Minnesota a bit more dangerous this year. One is obviously the talent upgrade at quarterback and receiver, and just the experience, right? Like they have experience and now they have depth, but then also you're getting guys who look different. Like you're upgrading the athleticism at the defensive end position, at the corner position, which I think is something that, especially if you want explosive plays on both ends of the ball and not just having to rely on a conservative approach, like that's what you need. You need athletic corners. You need athletic edge rushers to really make plays on the defensive side of the ball, and then you need the receivers and the quarterback to get them the ball.
100%. And I think that was obviously it's every coach's intention, but I think PJ feels like he got the guys that he really felt like he needed to get out of the portal. So we know he's feeling good about the team. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah. I feel like I can't talk about a Midwest, Big Ten West college football team without talking about the offensive line.
Yeah.
So how does this line stack up? Again, it looks like mostly maybe mostly seniors, at least from what I'm seeing. Talk about them and what are your thoughts as they enter 2024?
I am very excited for the offensive line. I think maybe outside of the running back room, they will probably be the best positional group we have as far as their run blocking ability. So you got Arianti Ursary at left tackle. Probably, he gets no love, I feel like, nationally, but Gopher fans are pretty excited for him, as is PJ Fleck. PJ Fleck calls him the most talented left tackle he's had in his tenure at Minnesota. So he's very athletic, and he's the highest, I believe he's the highest graded PFF pass blocking tackle returning to college football this year. So he's projected. Gopher fans are hoping he's a top 100 pick if he has a good season this year. So he's got high hopes there. You got Tyler Cooper at left guard, who's like a 6-year guy. So really experienced there. Greg Johnson will be starting center. He was a true freshman last year that got rotated in a lot. They're really excited about him. And then we brought in a transfer tackle from UTEP. I can't pronounce his name, but it's like Nikili. I don't have it in front of me. Atumalalu. Let's see here.
I don't have it here either.
I got it here in 1 second. Aluma Nikili. Sorry. Aluma Nikili. He was one of our last commits we picked up. He's 6'7", 360.
There you go.
And so that's important because they've wanted to move Quinn Carroll, who's been our right tackle, inside for a while. They feel like his natural position is guard. And so bringing in somebody that can maybe allow him to play inside will really, will help him develop for his shot at the NFL, but then also just, let him play his natural position. And I think it really bolsters this run blocking ability of the offensive line, because Quinn Carroll, if you had a nitpick on him, is that he didn't handle the athletic defensive ends very well in pass protection. So getting him inside where he can just focus on using his strength and not have to deal with as much quick twitchy players, just going to help him and help the offensive line overall. So if we can move him inside, I think this offensive line has the potential to be pretty dang good.
Which I feel like the best Minnesota teams, even if you go back to 2021, 2022, they were anchored by John Michael Schmitz, or
Yep.
am I saying that right?
Yep.
I mean, great center. And I remember thinking, I think Minnesota could be really good. And people gave me pushback because they're like, you don't realize what losing Schmitz means to this team. But I think from what you're saying, this is going to be a really strong offensive line, really good running back with Darius Taylor. Really became a force for Minnesota last year. Excited to see what he does now with a year in the strength and conditioning program. Again, receiver room is bolstered, the quarterback position is bolstered. That probably the biggest loss for you guys is probably Tyler Nubin. How are you guys feeling about replacing him on the back end?
It's interesting because we got Green back there and Gooseby and Bryson Coleman, and you also have, I don't think he's going to play probably this year, but you got Coy Perrick, who's the number one recruit in the state of Minnesota this year, as a 4-star kid. You have a lot of guys back there with experience. It's just none of them have really had to be the guy, and so. Nubin made a lot of big plays. Probably tried to do a little bit too much at times last year. Kind of had he basically got free roam. And so some big plays maybe happened on the back end. But I'm just looking forward to what Heatherman can do, the new D coordinator, because coming over from Rutgers, it sounds like when he was a D coordinator at the lower level, he liked to send some pressure. So with us having those experienced corners on the outside and liking our defensive ends this year, I'm hoping that can help out the safeties a little bit if we can get after the quarterback. But, they got experience. It's just as long as they're taking the progressional steps that you hope they would in the offseason, I think we'll be okay. Just maybe not as much of a playmaker threat from that position, because you never know how they develop, especially with how little PJ has allowed, tape to be seen this spring, given there was no spring game. So I'm projecting. I could be dead wrong. Maybe they're terrible, but on paper, they have a lot of experience. They like the guys that are there. It's just a matter of if they're progressing in the offseason.
Yeah. Well, and I think that leads to the next question I want to throw you is, this is not an easy schedule, but there's some silver linings with it. So like you get UNC at home and they don't have Drake May. So they'll still have quite a bit of talent, but like you're not facing Drake May. You do have to go to Michigan, but they've lost half their roster. You get Iowa at home, you get USC at home, you get Penn State at home. So like there's some advantages, but it is not an easy schedule, especially with how other teams have elevated. Rutgers is not, they're not an easy out anymore.
Right.
Wisconsin, we don't know what we're going to see with them this year. As you look at the schedule, what do you think is maybe the floor and what's the ceiling for the Gophers this year?
Yeah, well, it's a lot of projections right now from Gopher fans. Like I said, we haven't gotten to see much. So if I'm going to the floor, the 2 non-conference games after North Carolina, those should be gimmies. It's Rhode Island, and I think it's Nevada.
Yep.
So you should probably get both of those. Gosh, even in a bad season, I would like to think, not saying you couldn't lose both, you definitely could, but I would like to think you, as Gopher fans, you split Rutgers or Maryland. I think you can probably get one of those. And then I think you can probably still get Illinois or UCLA, one of those games. And that's saying you don't upset anybody that, is even considered a toss up. So I think the floor would probably be a 4-win team. And then the ceiling, there's only 2 games that I look at right away and I'll be like, it's a 99% chance you're not going to win that one. I would say at Michigan. Granted, they lost a lot of people and new coach, so maybe some hope there, but I'm going to not going into that one assume we're going to win. And then Penn State, as much I know we beat Penn State in 2019, but they just seem to have it all going for this year. It seems like they brought back 90% of their important players for the most part. So I think those two will be pretty tough to say that we'll have a realistic chance at winning. But if everything rolls your way, I really think this can be a 9-win season if the receivers and the quarterback and your transfers on the defensive side, if they all hit the way you hope they would, I think, and you get some breaks along the way and you stay healthy, I think you could see a 9-win season.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think you guys in Wisconsin might be in a very similar situation in that you have a new quarterback, you're trying to get everything to gel. Wisconsin's trying to mix and match their talent and their schemes with Phil Longo. But it's interesting, like it almost seems like you guys are shadows of one another, which is ironic because of the rivalry that you guys have with them. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, especially does Brosmer gel better or does Tyler Van Dyke gel better? And of course you guys play at the end of the season in Camp Randall. So now you're going to have to refresh my memory and memory for all the other Big Ten fans. I feel like Minnesota has the most trophies. What are all the trophy games for you guys?
So you got the Axe with Wisconsin. You got Floyd the Pig with Iowa there.
Floyd of Rosedale. There we go.
And then what else are we at? We have there's an unofficial one with Nebraska, which is kind of funny. The bits of broken chair trophy. That one's unofficial, but that one does get traded back and forth. I like that one. You have the little brown jug with Michigan. No one, I feel like nationally really considers that one big. It's one of the coolest. It's one of my favorite trophy games we play. I know Michigan has absolutely owned that, and so that's probably why it's not as big of a deal nationally. But Little Brown Jug's a cool one. And then when Penn State joined, you know how they, the conferences like make ones. We have like the Liberty Bell with Penn State.
Really?
No, to be honest, it's like cool. Yeah, when we beat them in 2019, yeah, we got the bell. Like, hold it up, that's awesome. But like that trophy, nobody. I swear, like to most fans, that made up Nebraska trophy probably means more than that bell with Penn State. It just the bell. It was so forced. It doesn't feel. I have no attachment to the bell with Penn State at least.
That sounds like most rivalries with Penn State. If we're being honest, like I did ministry up at Penn State for a while, and of course, I had Ohio State stuff, and I was talking with someone. It's like, we hate you guys, and I'm like, what, really?
Yeah.
And I love Penn State. I lived there for 4 years. I have a lot of love for Nittany Lions, but I find it ironic that the one rivalry that you're like, this is not really a rivalry, and this trophy is not really a trophy that we care about. It's right. Penn State. So we're sorry, Penn State fans, but
yeah. And Penn State's a great program. Don't get me wrong. We love beating them. Like that's a great win for us. It just, that trophy means nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Which one really, like, if you had to pick one that Minnesota as a whole is like, our whole season rides on this, like, which one is that?
It's Wisconsin. And I don't know why. I mean, I know why, because we play, pro football, college football. I'm sure that plays into it. It's the longest played rivalry in college football, Minnesota, Wisconsin. And I think, and now it's down to, like, I think their game separates us. I think last year separates us by a game in Wisconsin's favor all time. So it's been pretty even. I mean, obviously they went on that huge run in like from the Brewster into the Kill, Clay, and early Fleck era. So they went on a pretty long run there to even up the series and take the lead. But Yeah, man. I don't know how to describe it. I know the chance we hate Iowa, but us in Wisconsin, it's just a different animal. It's tough to describe. I'm sure like
Yeah.
Michigan,
Yeah.
you don't even say their name. Wisconsin, they just bug you, and they're just drunk when you're talking to them, half the time at the stadium. I know everyone's got those fans, but
Yeah.
Wisconsin and Iowa got plenty of those fans. And so yeah, and then I would say I was right there behind them. Iowa trashed our field the one year, and so they're proud of that. And then they're mad we beat them this past season. And so that rivalry is going to be as intense as ever. So, yeah, it's tough to put into words, and especially because I got cousins and an uncle from Wisconsin. So I hear it from them too, and that's
Oh
probably, I'm
yeah.
sure a lot of people have it that way too, where they got family right over in Wisconsin. There's a lot of Wisconsin kids that go to the U, and
Mm.
then when it's time to play the game, they don't switch allegiances. They stick to Wisconsin, and so they're just in their Wisconsin gear. That part really bothers me and irks me. So
Oh man.
yeah, it's just a lot that goes into it. But at the end of the day, it's all fun. It's just fun to play those guys and play for those trophies. So
Yeah. There is something very like I I can't find the word, but there's something really cool about you win the game and you get to swing an axe.
oh yeah,
Like that's I feel like that's the coolest trophy. It's way cooler than the turtle that Ohio State and Illinois play for, which I
yeah.
don't know why that's a thing, but yeah, that the axe is really cool.
It used to be a slab of bacon, but when we were beating them over and over again, they lost the trophy. They didn't want to give it back. So we had been beating them. They beat us. They had it. We came back and we beat them, and it mysteriously went missing. And so, but this trophy is pretty cool too. So I'm not too upset about that.
Yeah, I mean, bacon's awesome, but
Yeah.
axe,
We
yeah,
got Floyd. There's enough
yeah.
bacon going around in this
There,
in the state of Minnesota. So
there you go. I do want to ask you about Minnesota food. That's been something we've been over the past couple episodes. But before we do that, I do have one more question going back to
mhm.
roster. Ethan Kaliak-Manis was the starter last year, transferred to Rutgers, and we were actually on the episode together when we were talking who should be the
Yeah,
starter. Should it be Wimsatt or Kaliak-Manis? And I think literally like a few days later, Kaliak-Manis was named the
yeah.
starter, which I was shocked by. You guys weren't shocked by that, but I really thought Wimsatt was the guy. And I'm curious for you, Curt, personally, and as well as just Minnesota in general. What is your posture turns towards Kaliak-Manis, and do you think he can be good for Rutgers?
So yeah, I think Ethan, he was like the nicest guy while he's here. By all reports, he was just the nicest kid. Did everything the right way. For whatever reason, it just didn't, quite mesh up for him on the field here. So I have no bad feelings towards Ethan. Personally, I'm really happy he won the starting job. He's reuniting with Soraka. Um, one, good for Ethan. He just seems like a nice guy. I'm glad he's getting another opportunity to play Big Ten football. But two, as Gopher fans, this is going to answer a lot of questions for our own coaching staff. Greg Harbaugh, I've talked about this on our show. It's his first year. This is his first stint these last year and now this year being the offensive coordinator and a quarterbacks coach. If Ethan goes on to succeed with Soraka and Rutgers, and our passing offense struggles once again with Max Brosmer, who they zeroed in on and wanted to be the guy. I think that answers a lot of questions about our own staff and shows that we don't
Mm,
have the right guy in charge of that side of the football. So I think it's a win-win for the Gophers, because if Ethan goes over there and lights it up and you struggle, you got to make some changes. But if you moved on and you both are happy about it and you both do well, perfect. It was just a fit that didn't quite work out for whatever reason, but you can both move on. And yeah, I wish him nothing but the best, except we do play him this year, so that will be interesting. I'm sure
that
I'll
will
have
be, and it's late in the season. Like it
yeah.
could be a game for bowl eligibility, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
even more
Yeah.
for both teams. So it's a game with stakes.
Yeah, for sure.
Who who would have thought maybe 3 or 4 years ago Minnesota Rutgers is like going to be a big game.
Yeah, I know. I never doubted us, but I'm a fan. It's funny because not only now there's the quarterback change, they have taken a few players from us in the portal, and now they took Soraka from us as their offensive coordinator, and now we take their linebacker coach to be our new defensive coordinator. So there's just a lot of players that have been on both teams and coaches that know each other really well. And PJ knows Shiano very well. So there's just a lot of similarities. Ryan Burns, who is the Gophers 247 guy,
Yeah.
he refers to Rutgers as Minnesota East just because of all the similarities between the two. They both want to run the ball and play good defense. So yeah,
Yeah.
that game should be fun.
That ironically will be like it feels like it could shape up to be a classic Big Ten
Oh yeah.
matchup, which is really fun. So
Yeah.
sweet. Well, I'm excited for Minnesota. I think I remember back, man, I think 2004, 2005 when you guys had Maroney and Marion Barber, and I loved the running attack
Yeah.
of, under Glenn Mason, and I'm excited. I would love to see that Minnesota, 10-win team, that potential, get back and continue to progress, because I think it's fun when Minnesota's good, because they challenge Michigan for the Little Brown Jug, which I think is one of the great rivalry trophies. I think you think of college football, I'm like, the Jug is one of the, I think, relics of this sport. So
Yeah.
it's really fun. I've been in Minneapolis once. It was for a pastors conference. It was in January and it was really cold. And
Yeah.
I was
That'll
like,
happen.
I don't know what Minnesota is known for, but I was too scared to get out of the skywalk because it was so frigid. And so if I were to travel to Minneapolis, I always want to merge Indianapolis and Minneapolis. I'm like, no, it's Minneapolis. That's it. But if I were to travel there when it wasn't so cold for a game, or if others were to travel there, what's like the Minnesota delicacy, and what are the hot spots that we should go to for food in Minnesota?
Okay. Well, when you ask me food known for Minnesota, is Juicy Lucy a thing now everywhere in the Midwest? The Juicy Lucy?
So I've heard of it.
Okay.
I hadn't heard of it until recently, though.
Okay. Uh it just originated in Minnesota. So I would say that's like if we're gonna claim like a food, I would probably say it's the Juicy Lucy, which is just the cheese is inside of the burger. You bite it, it melts
Yes.
out. So Matt's Bar, I believe, in Minneapolis. I think they claimed the original. I'm south of the city, so I always go to the Nook in St. Paul, which isn't that far actually if you're in Minneapolis too. But so that's my favorite, is from the Nook.
Mm.
Man, and then you got the mall. I mean, if you're in there for a visit for everything, the Juicy Lucy, I think, is the stamp on food as far as what's unique. Tater tot hot dish, but you usually get someone to bake that for you, or
Wait,
casserole. People
tater
call it
tot hot.
casserole.
What's tater tot hot dish?
So it's like tater tots on top of like hamburger meat and green beans and like gravy or whatever makes like the soupiness kind of, of like a casserole. A lot of
Yeah,
people
yeah,
call it
yeah.
casserole, but we call it hot dish in Minnesota. So that's something you
Interesting.
go to like a home and get, though. That's not really something you're gonna bake
That
on your own. But
that's
so it's like a
fair.
hamburger, green beans, some carrots. I'm sure other people have their own, and then it's topped obviously with the tater tots, and I like blue
Oh,
cheese on mine too. But it's good. Um, but yeah, I mean, honestly, the Twin Cities is great because you can do pretty much whatever you want as far as activity wise. Plenty of breweries, places to eat, steakhouses all over the place. You got the Mall of America just south of it. I know everyone knows it, but we're the land of 10,000 lakes for a reason. Plenty of lake recreational activities for whenever you want to do that kind of stuff. I'm a fisherman myself, so I go fishing quite a bit.
there you
Um,
go.
yeah, I mean, pretty much anything you want. If you like thrill rides, I mean, Mall of America does have a little kids amusement park, and then there's also Valley Fair. That's like, I mean, you'd have to be in for a weekend, but it's like 40 minutes probably like west of the
Mm.
Twin Cities and Shakopee. We got Valley Fair, which is, I guess, our closest thing to. I've never been to Six Flags, but is it Six Flags?
There's Six Flags, there's King's
Yeah.
Dominion, there's like all those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Valley Fair is a giant amusement park here. So pretty much whatever you want to do. I would encourage you, if you're ever like in the state of Minnesota for a visit, up north, like near the Duluth Lake Superior area, is very pretty. A lot of stuff to do outside if you like being outdoors to do up there. So that's on the list for sure if you're just visiting for the first time.
Good stuff. I have not had a Juicy Lucy, but it's funny. There's another podcast I listen to. They have been an Ohio State podcast, but they've really expanded to try to cover all the teams of the North.
Sure.
And they talked about Juicy Lucy's on one of their episodes, and I'm like, I gotta get me one of those. And I did not know that they originated in Minnesota. So
that's their big claim. Or just deep fried walleye. I mean, I know other states got walleye, but we like to fish here, so.
Yeah. Is that what you catch when you're fishing? Is it mostly walleye?
Oh man, I wish. I don't have the patience for it. I have caught them, but I think walleye fishing takes a lot of patience to they seem to be a little bit more particular. I like just the fight. I mean, I like eating fish, but I like catching bass and pike, stuff that's a little bit more aggressive and fights. I mean, walleye fight great as well, but I'm not as patient as I should be for those.
That's some good eating though. So good stuff. Well, Curt, again, where can we find you, your podcast, and remind us when you're going live?
Yep. Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Central. The 24th is when we will be 23rd. Sorry, 23rd will be live.
Yes.
And then
I just realized this is posting next Monday. So it will
forget about it then.
Yeah. So if you want to time travel back, sorry, I totally hey,
right.
this is kind of 23rd. Oh, my bad. So
we're usually on every other week and in the off
week.
season, and then weekly, if not twice a week during the season when we actually got real football happening in front of us. So
very cool.
And we're at SkiUPod, basically wherever you listen to your podcast. We're available. If you like to watch, we are on YouTube. Same thing at SkiUPod. And then we're most prominent on Twitter or X, maybe I should say, at SkiUPod1. So feel free to hit us up. We'd love to hear from you.
And sometimes you are on the Big Ten Huddle as well.
Yes, we are.
So, which is great. So, and of course, again, if you're listening to this, make sure to like, follow, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and like the video and share it. Get those algorithms up so that we can continue to get the content out there, not just for this podcast, not just for SkiUPod, but really for the whole College Huddle, this whole community that's really banded together. It's been really fun. So, Curt, thanks for coming on here. And I know you're planning your episode for later this week, but I appreciate you taking time. And your dog did not bark once.
I know it. I complained about it, and it seems to have held off for now. So, yeah, it worked out well.
Wow, the storm broke just for us in this time frame. So
God knew Gopher football needed to be discussed, and so he gave us a little break. And
amen, amen. Well, Curt, thanks again. For the rest of you, take care. God bless.